So a lot of people think, oh gosh, I don't need that. I'm not old. I'm not going to lose capacity to make decisions at any time in the near future. But I nearly needed mine. Actually, across the road, I got hit by a car. So thankfully, I was relatively okay. But if it had been much worse, I would have needed my attorneys to step in and maybe make some decisions for me.
You're listening to the Young Minds Podcast.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to the Young Minds podcast, hosted by Burke Britton Financial Partners. This podcast helps young adults build confidence and clarity when it comes to money, empowered by youth, inspired by experience. We know that navigating the world of finance in your late teens to 20s can feel overwhelming, whether it's understanding your first payslip, learning how to invest, managing student debt, or just trying to save without missing out on life, because believe it or not, it is actually possible. That's why this podcast is here, to make finance more accessible, more understandable, and way more relevant to your life right now. Each episode will break down key financial concepts, give you practical tips you can actually listen to, and have real conversations about money. As university students coming to the end of our degrees, we created this podcast not because we have all the answers, but because we're asking the same questions you are. No confusing words, no lectures, just honest insight to help you make smarter money moves now and in the future. So whether you're studying, working, or figuring things out, you're in the right place. Alrighty, welcome back everyone to the Young Minds podcast. Today we have Alannah from Harwood Andrews here today with us. We're going to do a bit of a run through estate planning and all the things to know as a young person. Bit of an intro for us. Let's get into the real talk. If something unexpected happened tomorrow, who would actually know what to do with your stuff, your bank accounts, even your pets? Estate planning sounds like something for retirees, but it's actually about protecting your people and giving future you way less chaos. Let's get into it without the legal headache. So let's start on the basics. Hello, Alannah. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Good. That's okay. Do you want to give us just a little bit of a rundown? Who are you? How did you get into estate planning? Let's just start there.
Yeah, for sure. So, yes, I'm Alannah. I work at Harwood Andrews, which is a law firm in Geelong. We're a full-service firm, and I'm a lawyer in the Wills and Estates team. So I focus specifically on this. It sort of sounds small or niche, but it actually is really broad. There's a lot that comes into it. So I guess what is estate planning is really focusing on what happens after you pass away, which, of course, to young people might sound morbid or a bit scary, but it is really important that you think about it because, unfortunately, you never know when your time is up. We hope that that's decades and decades away, but we do see it where it's, a lot sooner than people might expect. So I guess we see it a lot that it's always something that's on people's to-do list or the back of their mind, but it's actually really easy to do. It's such a simple process. So I guess the main part of what we do in estate planning is helping people prepare their wills. So that is the main document that addresses, who will be in charge of everything for them when they pass away, and then beneficiaries, so who will receive what they have upon their death. So they're the main things. If there's any sort of specific things, we can put them in, like pets or jewelry, things that are important to people. But the main parts are really the executors, so who looks after everything, and the beneficiaries who would receive.
Yeah, great. Let's touch on a bit about what actually does happen if you don't have these sort of things in place.
Yeah, so if you don't have a will, or you do have a will but it's not valid, then the law comes in and says who will get what you have based on sort of like a next of kin hierarchy. So it'll usually sort of start with if you have a spouse or a partner, a de facto partner, it'll go to them. Then it goes down to sort of kids. And then if you don't have that, then it goes to, parents, siblings, and so on and so on. A lot of people think it goes straight to the government. That is not true. You'd have to get through a lot of family to get there. But I've never seen that happen. So yeah, there is sort of a hierarchy, and sometimes that's what you would want, that sort of flow on. But a lot of the times it isn't. You might have an estranged parent or an estranged child. You might like one sibling more than another. So even though there's that sort of default position, a lot of the time it's not applicable for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, well then we might jump into around wills in the whole what goes where sort of situation. We touched a bit on what an actual will is, but do we want to go into a bit more depth on that one? And let's also touch on who needs one.
For sure. I personally think everyone needs one, some more than others, for sure. So, so I guess as soon as you turn 18, you can make a will. We have had 18-year-old clients make wills for different reasons. Some just are excited about the idea, or some actually their circumstances require them to do one. But everyone can do a will at any time. You can do as many as you like. They revoke, or we revoke all prior wills when we do a new one, unless you're specifically not for some reason. And then you go into appointing executors, like I said before, who will be in charge. Often we like to look at people that are around your age or younger. If it's for young people and you want to have your parents, that's fine. But just know that it's likely they won't outlive you. So at some point, it's important to have someone that will likely outlast you. For young people, siblings, parents, spouse, obviously, that's usually the main people that you'd look to appoint. Doesn't have to be, can be a friend that you trust. And then you can give any specific gifts. So like I said before, jewelry. You can discuss ownership of pets after you pass. That can be the main importance for people. People really care what's going to happen with my dog. So we can certainly look at that. And then a lot of people have this misinformation that, if you're doing a will, you have to give a big list of everything you own. Like, I give my car to this person, I give my house to this person, I give my, shares to this person. It's usually not the case that we do it that way. We like to look at everything as a pool, which is called your residuary estate. So it's everything after the payment of any debts, expenses, funeral, things like that, everything that's left. And people usually do that either all to one person or to a few people, or in different proportions. So we can split it up into 100 parts if you like, and give one to every person you like in your life. But it's really flexible how you do it. But we don't like to talk about specific assets usually, because especially for young people, things are changing all the time. You might have a house, not right now, but you might have a house later. So we like to look at it as a pool of what you have now, but also what you might have later.
Absolutely. You mentioned executors and people that can be executors, but can we discuss what an executor actually does?
Yeah. So it's actually a really important role, and it can be a really strenuous role. So it's important that you do put the right person in place, because they basically make every decision from, organising funeral. Usually that'll be, a few different people doing that, but your executor does have this sort of final say about funeral, and then they have to figure out what all of your assets are. So if they know beforehand, that's handy. Then they, usually engage a solicitor like myself to assist them with the estate administration process. So we can go into a bit of detail if you like, but basically most estates require what's called a grant of probate, which is when the court says, yes, this will's valid, you, the executor, can go ahead and deal with the assets. So that depends on what assets you have, but usually that's required. And that sort of is a sort of process of doing that application. So it is a sort of, I guess, thankless role, especially if you're appointing someone who isn't a beneficiary. Sometimes you can give them a gift for doing that, or commission or something like that. But normally it'll be someone who's also benefiting under the will, is usually the case. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right, we might jump into then powers of attorney, which we've got here as the underrated part.
It is.
We talk about what they are, the differences between, like, you've got your financial and your medical.
Yes.
Let's just touch on them.
So even though they are part of our sort of estate planning documents, they actually address what happens while you're still alive if you need someone to jump into your shoes and make decisions for you. So they cease on death and no longer apply, but there's a few different kinds. So in the one document, you can appoint someone to make financial and personal decisions for you. So anything you can do with your assets, they can, open and close bank accounts, they can buy shares, sell shares, buy a house, sell a house, anything you can do. There's a few limitations to that, but pretty much anything you can do, they can do for you once that document commences, and there's a few different options for when. And then personal decisions is things like lifestyle decisions, if you needed to go into care, if something happened to you, things like that. And then there's also who can make medical decisions for you. So that's a appointment of medical treatment decision maker. And it's in order of priority who can make medical decisions for you if you can't. So if you're unconscious or something and you can't tell the doctors, yes, do this or don't do this, it's who can do that. And it's, in order of priority. So a 1, 2, number 3, if you like, 4, and a doctor will go to that person and say, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How do powers of attorney sort of reflect on younger people? Like, what's a situation where you would need one?
Yeah, so a lot of people think, oh gosh, I don't need that, I'm not old, or I'm not going to lose capacity to make decisions at any time in the near future, but they can also be used for convenience or outside of that losing capacity scenario. So, Bridie, as you know, I nearly needed mine. Actually, across the road, I got hit by a car. So that was about 1.5 years ago. But thankfully, I was relatively okay. But if it had been much worse, I would have needed, my attorneys to step in and maybe make some decisions for me. So you never know what's going to happen, and it doesn't mean growing old and losing capacity. It can be, you're in an accident and you don't pass away, but you need someone to sort of help you out. Or it might even just be that you go on holidays and you need someone to deal with things back here while you're away, or you're working away, or you're off the grid and you can't deal with paying bills or accessing your bank account, and you just need someone to do that. So we do see a lot of people making those documents when they're doing a big Europe trip or something like that, where they think, oh gosh, I might need someone to help me out if something goes wrong while I'm away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. They're very good examples. How do you know that you've chosen the right person for these roles?
Well, firstly, in powers of attorney, the person you appoint, or the people, they have to accept that role. So it's not something you can just keep a secret. With the will, you don't have to tell anyone about it if you don't want to. But powers of attorney, your attorneys do have to say, yes, I'm happy to act in that role. So that's usually a pretty good indication of whether they're going to be an okay person. It might be that they uphold the same values as you, they have the same sort of values about money or lifestyle decisions or medical decisions. Someone that would choose something for you that you would choose for yourself, basically. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's a very good way of putting it. And the next sort of broad topic we've got here is around digital life, which is really applicable to young people these days, because everybody's got something online.
Very true.
Let's talk about what actually happens to everything online if you were to pass away.
Yeah, I don't like to be the typical lawyer of it depends, but there's different sort of categories of digital assets. And, so the best thing I think for young people to be doing, and it genuinely takes 10 seconds, is you can, most people, not everyone, but most have iPhones. So Apple has a legacy contact option where you can appoint someone who can basically take over your phone and access photos, notes, everything like that. Once you pass away, they just need to provide your death certificate to Apple. So they will get sort of a code that they can access once you pass away so that they can access those things for you. It might be that, our parents and grandparents have old photo albums and things, but we have our phones, and that's important to people, and that's someone's legacy of, their memories. So it is important, I think, if you're listening to this and you think, oh gosh, that's awesome, it genuinely takes 10 seconds. So just look up legacy contact on your phone and you can appoint someone. I think it's usually a contact saved, and they'll be able to access your phone and all of that once you pass away. And they have that option for different social media platforms as well. Facebook has it. I'm not too sure about Instagram, but different platforms have different rules about accessing it after you pass. So if that's important to you and you have, if you're an influencer and you want to make sure things are in place, or, it doesn't have to be an influencer, it can be anybody. Just check the platforms you're on, see what their rules are. It's good to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's something new for me. I've never heard of a legacy contact, so I will be looking into
Please
that.
Please do.
I do have an Apple phone.
Yes. I'm sure Samsung and everything has similar options too.
Yeah, probably. Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much for going into detail on all of those different topics. They were sort of the main ones that we had for today.
The other just last thing I do want to touch on, which is really important, and if you're going to take away anything from this for young people, it's your superannuation is key. A lot of young people say, I don't have anything, they might have $20,000 in the bank and they think that's not worth worrying about. But if you've been working a part-time job or a full-time job, your super balance might be, who knows, $20,000, $30,000. But if you were to pass away, your death benefit and or your life insurance on that might be massive. We've seen young people pass and they have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting there, triggered on their death. So that is so important, and not a lot of people know that, and it's so easy to deal with. Every super fund has what's called a binding death benefit nomination form that you can do, a BDBN for short. So it's usually about a 3-page form. Unfortunately, you do usually have to print it out, physically sign it. And with 2 witnesses, but it just says who will get your super and any benefits payable on your death. And it is limited to specific people like dependents, spouse, kids, other people you might have an interdependency relationship with, or your estate. So if you want it, if you're wanting everything to go to a sibling and you're not living with them or anything, then you can just nominate your estate or your legal personal representative to receive it. And that is an easy document to do. You'll just have to send that to your super fund. Usually they lapse every 3 years, so you do usually have to renew them. Some funds have non-lapsing options, so they just stay in place until you change it. But it is really important and so easy. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need me to help you with that. I can if you like, but if you look up, if you're with ESS or Host Plus or Hester, then just look up your super fund, find the form, fill it out. If you take one thing away from today, please do that.
That's something we actually do really push for here as well. Because we find we have so many people come in and they're like, oh, actually, I did do that a while back, but I haven't looked at it since. Yeah. And it might be an ex-partner, for example.
Yes.
And it's that's a big one.
Massive. And it's so crazy because pretty much everyone has superannuation in Australia, right? And it's basically like a forced asset. It's amazing. It's a great system, but no one knows how to, not a lot of people know how to deal with it or what's going to happen when they pass. So I think for young people, that's a massive takeaway that they can do easily themselves.
While we're touching on it, what happens if you don't have one in place?
So basically, if you don't have a binding form in place, binding nomination, your super fund will decide where it goes, which can sound a bit scary, but usually they will make a decision based on, who you've got in your life, if you've got any dependents, or if not, then to your estate. But it can take so long for that to happen. We've seen super funds take 2 years to make a decision that should be, just a given, to a spouse, and they've got a young baby that they need to take care of, and there's no other funds. That it might be your main asset on your passing, and it's locked away. So if you do a binding nomination, usually it's paid out a lot quicker, and it just goes straight to the person you've nominated, provided it's valid. And no one can say, no, that's not right, that's not fair. If it's binding and it's valid and the super funds accepted it, that's how it'll be paid.
Yeah. Good. Very good. All right, well, we might do a bit of a dig into your expertise then as a bit of a sort of closing off. What are the most common misconceptions that you see with younger clients?
Yeah, I guess it's just sort of what we've touched on, the misconceptions of, I don't have anything, so, why would I bother? Or I hear this one a lot, I won't care, I'll be dead. I love that one. It's frankly not about you. It's about who you leave behind and making sure you don't leave a mess for them. Making it as simple and easy for them. They're going to be grieving if your loved ones lose you. They're going to want to deal with that and their grief rather than, oh my gosh, who did they bank with, or where was their superannuation? So the more things you can tidy up for your loved ones, the better, I think. And let's hope you live till 80 or 90 or whenever you like, but we do unfortunately see people go before that, and you never know when your number's up. So having these things in place sooner, you can just have a bit more peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The next one that I had was around, when should someone get legal help, and when are DIY tools okay?
We do see some people use, the DIY Australia Post will kits. They can in limited situations be okay, but if you're completing it yourself, you're just not necessarily taking everything into account that you might need to consider. Sometimes it just makes more of a mess doing things like that. So we do recommend, if you're going to do it right. There is easier tools, then you don't have to come in and see the lawyer. We have an online platform, so you can basically fill out a questionnaire. It's about half the price. Fill out the questionnaire with everyone you want in it, all the different roles and things. We'll prepare the documents, email them to you. You never have to see our faces. You'll check them, make sure everything's right. We'll have a phone call with you. And then make sure, there's no changes that need to be done. Then we'll send them to you by email again and explain how to execute those and sign them. So it doesn't have to be, a confronting process. It can be done in your own time at your own pace. I really do recommend that option for simple sort of scenarios. Young people, particularly most young people, that'll be fine to do those. So if you're interested, have a look at that online platform. And it just doesn't have to be a scary process.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Alrighty. All right. Last question, or maybe two more questions actually. How often should people review these documents, and what life events actually trigger an update?
Great question. We get this question a lot. We usually say, at the very least, if you've done a will, have a look over it every couple of years. And that doesn't mean to say you have to come back and see us every couple of years. You can if you want. But, just make sure everything's still as you want it to be. Make sure, if anyone that you've listed has passed away, hopefully we've provided backup situations, but it might be that you just want to sort of make some changes after that. Or it might be, a divorce or marriage, or, new children are born. Those sort of big life changes are things that you'd want to update your estate planning for. So not a lot of people know this, but when you get married, it revokes any wills you might have in place, unless it says that you've made the will in contemplation of marriage. So, for example, you might get engaged and say, yep, we're ready to do our wills. We want to give everything to each other. And if you're not yet married, we would put that clause in to say, you know, once you're married, this will is not revoked. So, you know, you might have had a will 10 years ago and you think, oh, good, I've got a will, but you've since married and that's gone. So, you know, that's a good time to update everything. You'd probably want to anyway. Divorce, hopefully not too many young people are divorcing, but it definitely happens. And divorce revokes a will to the extent that your ex-partner's involved. So if they're an executor, that's revoked. But it might end up being that you've got a sort of half a will. So, you know, that's a good time. Even just if you separate, also a good time to do it because separation doesn't revoke anything. So it might be that, you know, you've separated and you want to benefit someone else. And if you pass away, you know, that person might get everything. It's really scary, and we do see it happen, unfortunately. But just big life changes. Just think about, you know, is what I've got in place still right? Do I need to, you know, have a bit of a refresh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right. I think that was a good one to sort of close off on.
For sure.
Yeah, those big milestones in life where things like that do happen. Like, people aren't thinking about their wills in that moment.
No.
But it's, definitely something to consider. So thank you very much for coming on today. This is great.
Thanks for
really
having
me. We like to do a bit of a closing call to action for anybody listening. It's just a sort of close up of what we talked about today. So today's closing call of action is to take 5 minutes, literally just 5 minutes, make a quick list of who you would want to trust with all these decisions we discussed today, with anything you've got, your money, your health, your pets, if that's who you're thinking about, and then actually tell someone that you do trust. And if you're ready, you're more than welcome to have a chat with Alannah at Harwood Andrews. And we've got here, future you will be very grateful, but most importantly, anybody you leave behind will be very grateful.
For sure.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners to check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening. Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decisions, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, situation, or needs, and seek advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of Acumen Financial Planning, ABN 89051 208 327, Australian Financial Services Licence 232706.